think we're going. Yeah. The portal may have just ended, but recruiting and everything else keeps the Badgers land another in-state target in the 2027 class. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. That is Justin over there. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. That's phenomenal and awesome. And it is thanks to all of you in this community and all the other Locked On communities that have built this. So thank you for that. Today's episode, Dustin Roach commits in the third in-state prospect in the 27 class. Is that a trend? Is that something that we should take note of? Or is it just kind of coincidence? Plus, where is Justin at? Where am I at overall right now with this program? Optimism level after the portal is mostly ended. But Justin, we got to start with Dustin Roach, in-state kid. Really interesting frame. I'm going to try not to loop this. Let's fire the cannons and let's get into what the 6'3" in-state kid brings to Wisconsin.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Okay, let's get particulars here. 6'3", 180 pounds, athlete. Guy plays on both sides of the ball. He's coming to be a safety, but he's got explosive film as a receiver. Also a basketball guy. I love multi-sport kids. Coming out of Waukesha, 2027 player. Not a ton of offers yet. Make of that what you want, right? Make of that what you want. Justin, thoughts on Dustin Roach coming to Wisconsin?
I really like the pickup. I think that from an in-state standpoint, we don't normally get kids with this type of frame and size. And honestly, upside, I think there's a lot to like about him in terms of his level of athleticism. I brought it up in the Discord. I just talked about it with you here before. He reminds me of when you're watching the MLB draft, you see guys that are playing center field that just range back and have that kind of loose athletic frame. And I don't know if he's ever played baseball, but it's one of those things that I pick up on athletically where you just kind of notice the gait and stuff like that you see from a guy when they're used to running in space and just kind of flying. He's got some of that to him. I don't know how fast he is. You and I talked about it a little bit. I said he might be a 4.6 kid. I think there's potential to get him into the 4 or 5 range if you do some speed work with him and you develop him athletically. But I don't know if he's a burner. He's not going to be a guy who's going to be flying around at 4.4 on the back end. But big frame. I really like his instincts in terms of coverage. I think he gives you a lot of ability on that end in terms of being able to roam center field and be intelligent at playing center field for Wisconsin. Just some of the instincts that you see on his film.
I think it's well said. I like the baseball reference there as a center fielder because I would love for him to be that for the Badgers on defense. It's been a long time. I feel like since the Badgers have had a really consistent guy, a really consistent safety who could do everything. When's the last safety we had, Justin, that you were like, he can come up and support in the run, but he can also drop back, play single high. He could cover a tight end. I don't even know if you would call Zachman that. I don't think so. I don't think he could play single high that well. Like, it's been a while since they've had a complete safety.
Yeah, I would say probably
Latrell Jamerson?
Yeah, Jamerson was the one I was thinking of. He was the one that had the speed to be able to come up and play slot. And
Woller's a good one.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call him necessarily a center fielder. He had some instincts. He's not somebody that I would like. He was closer to a box safety than he was a guy that I wanted playing traditional center field. This kid, I feel like, projects more as a center field safety just by the way he moves on the secondary. He looks like a guy whose instincts are like just assessing what's going on and being able to play deep and kind of roam. I always felt like Wohler was a guy you looked at that was just constantly wanted to come downhill. This kid doesn't feel that way.
I think, maybe you're right there. I would say, and who knows with Roach, he's a 2027 kid, but I love the frame. When you go watch film of him, he's 6'3". He's all of 6'3".
Yeah, he's definitely 6'3".
He's definitely the like prototypical. If you could build a safety, he's long, he's rangy. That length allows you to play bigger in zones because you're going to close gaps. It allows you to get over the top easier. I think this is a guy that's going to be able to come downhill and support the run really easily. Again, to me, it just how fast is he and how explosive is he is going to determine if he can be like a single high cover safety. But I'll say this. The ball skills, I love the ball skills. He tracks it well. He's a receiver. He plays basketball. I think if you weren't recruiting him at safety, you could recruit him at receiver at this level and nobody would bat an eye. So if you're going to give me that type of frame with those type of ball skills, and he's probably, like you said, a 4.55, 4.6 guy already, and that could certainly get faster. He's a couple years out. I think this is a really nice pickup for the Badgers, Justin, because you just don't get many guys. You nailed it from in-state with this type of frame and this type of projection.
Mm-hmm.
Really good get for the Badgers, I think.
Yeah, I think, and we look at this in just the bigger picture of in the state. This is one of those guys that you're like, Wisconsin can't miss on this guy. Like, you might be able to get somebody slightly higher rated somewhere else. But I number one, I'd be shocked if you're going to find somebody outside the state that's going to have this type of frame that you're going to be able to get in on and actually lock down. 6'3" safeties that have good speed and good coverage ability, they're not exactly, like, they're kind of unicorns in the safety game. And normally, if you find somebody that's that tall, you're losing something in terms of athleticism with it. I think this kid actually moves pretty well for being as big as he is. And I think that's like, because I guess the comparison you'd have is who's the kid that we brought in to play the dollar a couple of years ago?
Raphael Dunn.
Yes, Dunn. He moves better than him. He moves much better as a safety than him. But that's what you typically would expect to get in that type of frame. And I feel like Roach is far more of like a traditional center field safety, free safety type than what a guy like Dunn was. So Dunn was more of a guy you're like, you can play him up as almost like a big, like a lanky safety that's going to almost like play like a weak side linebacker.
You know, he kind of reminds me of body-wise, Amari Snowden. I think he's got a little Amari Snowden to his body type. And I wish I said it from the jump. Who knows how it would have worked, but I think Snowden should have started at safety anyway. And that's the body type I want at safety.
Yeah, I did some Evan Flood reading, and he brought up Scott Nelson.
Oh, so his family man Ty down below.
Yeah, I think I can see that to a degree. I think this kid looks like he moves a little bit differently than Nelson, but I can see the comparison in that regard. And if we recall, Nelson was like a 6'2", 180 guy. So like there's similar frames. From a rating standpoint, I brought this up when I was talking to Nick. I said that I thought he was going to be a high 3-star. I think that's probably about where you'd expect him, somewhere in that 87 to 89 range, which is good. I think I'll take a safety like that that's from in-state. I think it bodes really well for our in-state class overall. For the first time, you kind of start to look at this and say, for the players that we truly want in-state, we may end up there's a reasonable chance to expect a sweep. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that I feel like you're in good position for guys like Ryder and
too, I think, to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's pause there, though. I want to hit that next segment, the in-state recruiting. If this is a trend, if how much you care about that. Bo Dragon says Tanner McAvoy. I don't think he's quite the athlete McAvoy was. Justin and I were talking about McAvoy before the show. I think here's the thing. I think with Roach, if Roach can be a 4-5 guy, I think it unlocks a whole new tier to his game. I think it creates a whole new level and upside to what he can be with his size and his frame. There's not a ton of guys at his size that are 4-5 guys. People, I'll say this really quick, Justin, and then I'll let you take it. People, I say this in general, don't realize how hard it is for guys at high school level to run actual 4.5s or 4.45s. Like, that's actually really fast. Most of these kids don't run that.
Most of the wide receivers that we see during the regular season that are already in strength and conditioning are in the 4.5 range. Like, there's not a ton of 4.4 guys out there. I will say, I agree with you that you probably say McAvoy is slightly more athletic. I think that this kid's far more physical in the way that he moves and carries himself. And I think that is a positive because I don't have any concerns about him coming up and hitting. Like, if somebody's coming across the middle, I'm not worried about him sticking his head in there and making a play. We had concerns with that about McAvoy. Would he actually wrap somebody up or make the play? You know, he basically was like a punt returner almost in the back end when we had McAvoy, where it was like he was either going to catch the ball or it was like he's going to play patty cake with the guy when he was trying to tackle him.
McAvoy was definitely the guy in EA Sports that has like a 97 zone rating and like a 62 tackle. Like, he wasn't a hitter. But listen, I'll say this. It was so phenomenal to have a guy back there that I think he had like 6 picks one year. Yeah. Like, he was just a total center fielder, and this team has missed that. And he wasn't a tackler, but I think if you can get back to having somebody that can cover sideline to sideline like McAvoy and break up some of those deep passes, it would help this defense out a ton. All right, we're going to take a second here, come back. ED Yates says, fire the cannon. We already did. You missed it. And I didn't even loop it this time.
I do want to weigh in on Bo Dragon quick before we go. I would agree with this he says the difference between 4-4 and 4-5 is nothing, instinct counts. What I would say is I agree with that. I think this kid's really instinctual. You watch him, he sees things kind of before they happen on the back end. You see him track the quarterback's eyes really well. He's going to have to get rid of some of that at the next level because quarterbacks from day one are taught to look him off, and he's going to have to be very careful with not taking himself out of position with it. But it is something to look at where that's a definite positive with how well he seems to see things before they start going into motion.
Yeah, no, instincts. I read this somewhere, I forget where, some scouting guy who said instincts shave a tenth off the 40 time, which it was just kind of a saying, but I was like, oh, that's a really cool saying because instincts do make you play faster. They shave time off your 40. I will say though, the difference between 4-4 and 4-5 isn't nothing. It's not. When you have a guy running a 9 route or you have a guy trying to close an angle,
2 steps.
It's not nothing. That's a reason why the 4-4 guys go in the top 10 of the draft and the 4-5 guys go in the second round. But to Bo's point, instincts make that speed play up or they make the speed play down, depending on if you have good or bad instincts. And we've seen that on both ends of the spectrum. All right, let's take a second here. We're going to come back. Talk about in-state recruiting. Is this a trend? Does Justin care about where we get players from? It's a serious, honest question. Some people care, some people don't. Some people are in between. Let's talk about the start of the 2027 class in-state recruiting and then where we're at optimism level. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show. Quick second to say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at FanDuel. Justin, who are you rooting for in the playoffs right now?
Well, your team's out. My team's out. Rajiv's team's out. Right now, you know what? I don't really have a team. It's so hard to look at this and be like, I feel good about any of these teams because most of the season I was actively rooting against all of them.
Yeah. I'm cheering for the Broncos. I'll just say, I'm going to say go Broncos, even though without
Jim
quarterback.
Leonard.
Yeah, Jim Leonard getting a ring would
losing their quarterback, though, is a problem.
I know. I don't want anybody from the NFC to win, so go AFC, I guess. If you want to get in on that action, head over to FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel has got you covered with the Profit Boost pack, which is waiting for you in the app. So if you feel great about a certain team, a certain matchup, the Profit Boost lets you get more in to those profits, maximize your winnings, lean into your game day instincts. If you want to bet along with Jim Leonard, bet along with Jim Leonard. Not that he's betting. Let me be very clear. Cheering for Jim Leonard. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bet feel that way too. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Grab your Profit Boost pack every NFL game day. Today's episode also brought to you by TurboTax, our great friends. It's getting close to our tax season, and that can be stressful for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. Maybe you have home businesses, maybe you got side hustles, maybe you got all of the above, or whatever else. Kids, family, work, travel. TurboTax can take care of all your deductions, file all your forms, and take that stress off your plate. Hook up with a local TurboTax expert, and then hand off everything, upload your documents, and go about your day. Whatever your day entails, go about your day. Let them do all the TurboTax, the tax work for you. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. And if you didn't file last year, just get it filed by February 28th with TurboTax, and they will hook you up. Take taxes off your plate, get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Now, let's get into this. Justin, in-state recruiting. So this has been something fans and parts of the media have been critical of with Luke Fickell since he got here. He came in and he didn't retain much in-state coaching talent. You know, a lot of those guys that had Wisconsin ties weren't on his staff. And for the most part, they have not landed kids in-state. Now, in 2027, they've got 3 in-state already. Potentially, they're going to add a couple more that we feel pretty good about. Is this it? First of all, does this feel like a new start of a trend to you, or is this coincidental?
I think we're going to have to take a look at things from a year-by-year basis, just by the way it plays out. Like, some of this has to do with what school are these kids coming from to begin with? What are the options that they have now? They could do really well against some very high-level programs this cycle. And I do think that they are going to be better going forward. It seems like they've kind of got their legs under them a little bit more now. But I think you're always going to have certain programs that are going to be a problem, a thorn in our side, so to speak, as long as we're not good. So if we can turn in the right direction here and have a good year, I think that helps you a lot. I also think what I will say is, I know you brought up whether there is value in this or not. I don't know if it matters from a talent perspective, but I do think it matters from how much are these kids willing to bleed for the program and how serious are they about wanting to see the program do well. We have seen with the transfer portal, and I don't even want to say that every Wisconsin kid is going to be this way where they care and are willing to stick it out, because clearly that's not always the case. But I do think the likelihood of a kid caring about the program and wanting to stay and see things do well is far higher than it would be if it's a kid from out of state who probably has options closer to home. And, Wisconsin might not have even been a team that he really cared about growing up. That can be a factor in things.
Yeah, I want to hit on your last part, which I completely agree with. I think the in-state recruiting matters less than some people. Some people make it out to be the be-all, end-all. Fill your team with Wisconsin kids. I don't think it's at that level, but I think it matters more than nothing. I think there's a middle ground there, and there's an intangible value to having guys that grew up rooting for this program, going to Camp Randall. I think those guys are more likely to stick it out. And if you're more likely to stick it out, you're more likely to be let's take a guy off this last year's team, Justin, Ben Barton. Let's take guys those guys, if you get them from out of state, they're less likely to stay and develop. They're more likely to take.
Jamel Howard was effectively that, right? He was a kid that was putting his time in trying to earn his way up. He got to this year and he left. That's the difference. Barton probably could have gotten to this point where he was blocked and eventually could have just been like, you know what, I'm going to move on.
Yeah. I think you're more likely to get a few of those kids that stay. And you're still going to have Wisconsin kids that leave, and you're still going to have out-of-state kids who play every year here and they bleed for the program. It's never 100% either way, but I think it's good for the culture. I think it's a good intangible thing. Mm-hmm. And I do think, to my original question, I do think this is the start of a bit of a trend. I do think this staff is saying, we're going to put a little more effort in state. Let's land some of these kids and let's build up some of that intangible value. Now, you still got to go get guys in other states and in other spots.
Yeah, I think they're looking to have an established culture a little bit more. And I think they're looking at it like the opportunity is greater with guys who actually care about the school versus just coming here to play football.
Badger says the in-state guys are more likely to be culture guys, and that we need to be the glue for an otherwise eclectic group of players. Great use of eclectic. Mm-hmm. That is a fun way to describe the portal. Very eclectic players, nomads out there. Football nomads traveling the land, being eclectic. I love that. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. Will Hannah says, just jumped on. I can tell you my opinion as far as ratings go. Roach is a 4-star. Love the kid. Love that, Will. Let's go. Bo says, we don't have a culture. We are building a culture right now. Part of that is getting in-state kids, quite frankly. Yeah. All right. And Will Hannah also says, Wisconsin kids matter a lot. Not everything, but a lot. Talk to me about where are you at right now? If I had to 5-minute conversation, how do you feel right now about the Badgers program? Did they fix everything? Nothing? Somewhere in between?
So I was when you brought this question up to me, my initial thought was cautiously optimistic. I don't look at what we did and say, these are all A pluses. I do look at it and say, do I feel like a lot of the holes were filled? Yes. Now you got to go to work and find out what you actually have. And I think that's kind of where we're at, is like, do I think Wisconsin can be average or a bowl team right now based off of what we picked up? Yes. What that ceiling is going to be determined by what happens over the next 6 months. And that's going to have to be, you have to have all these guys buy in, and you have to have some of these guys prove that they're ready to take the roles that they're probably going to be thrust into, and hopefully be, elevate things. There are some ways, like we've talked about, the schedule isn't particularly daunting. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin, if you see some of these young guys that we've already had in-house finally look like the players that we expected them to be when we got them, and this mix of new players come in and actually hit, there is a non-zero chance that this could be a really good football team this year. I'm not saying playoff team, but I'm saying they could be really good. Like we can play with anybody good this coming year, which would be a complete 180 from where we've been over the last few years. And if that happens, that's huge for us. Mm-hmm. We would all be super excited to be at least playing competitive ball games in November, where it's like we have stakes. Like we might not be like a real playoff threat, but we're at least like there's a non-zero like avenue where we can look at things and say, well, if we can get lucky and win a couple of these games, there's a chance. We haven't felt that way in a really long time. And I think we'd all feel great to have that. And like right now, there is talent on this roster. I do feel like we're in far better circumstances. Like offensive line is one of those positions I look at. I feel far better about the level of competition that's going to happen at each position this year than it did last year. Because I do think that there are multiple guys that I look at it pretty much every position and say, there's a pretty good chance this guy can end up winning this position. And last year we didn't feel that way. Last year we pretty much called the starting offensive line when we started spring ball.
Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing if you have established guys. Like you do.
If you're looking at a bunch of juniors and seniors, it's one thing. Like we're not there. We have a bunch of redshirt sophomores and some guys who are going to be potentially, redshirt juniors.
We got eclectic offensive linemen. I'm going to use that word from now on describing portal guys. I think you hit on a couple really good things there. I love what you said about Steaks. It's been a while since we've been able to play for Steaks. That's important, and this team needs to get there this year. I'm very cautiously optimistic. I am an optimistic guy in nature, but let's be very honest with this. This staff has fooled us a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
The whole fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me thrice, I'm going to stop getting fooled. There's an element of we bought in a couple years, and yes, injuries matter and schedule matters, but you still can't lose to Iowa by 40 2 years in a row. So injuries are not. That's unacceptable. And I want to be cautious with this because I still think there's very real questions here. I think the offensive line's better, but Justin, they're still counting on Kevin Haywood coming off a major injury that hasn't played a ton. They're counting on something at right tackle that's unproven. They're counting on a couple guard spots that are a bit in flux. I think there's real questions at receiver. I know we got a bunch of bodies we like, but I think there's real questions there. And I'll also say this. I think the best player on the team last year was Mason Reiger. And
there's no doubt about that.
I don't think
it's close.
We're counting on a lot of potential that you and I like, but we're counting on a lot of potential in spots to replace some real pieces. I'm cautiously optimistic is what I would say, but it's cautious.
Do you think that what we saw at the end of last season was real and is going to carry over? Because I think that mentality that we picked up in those last few games is as important as finding players that fit and everything here, because I think we legitimately did not have that attitude for the first 2/3 of last season.
It's a great question. Yeah.
And if we have that heading into this season, that makes a major difference, because there are definitely positions we can look at and say, this is clearly a better situation than what we had last year. And Joseph being a primary one. Obviously, wide receiver took a step back. I think we like some of the talent that's in that room, but I think there were legitimate pieces that we felt really good about. We just had nobody to give him the ball last year.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it was all mirage last year down the stretch. I really do think the addition of Post and Catalano changed a lot of things, and those guys are only going to get better. I don't think that was a mirage.
I think the interior guys are going to be better this year.
I do too. I do think there is an element of, I'll be completely honest, I think some teams took us pretty lightly. There was some weather-induced effects at Washington and Oregon that made both those games a little weird, I would say. I think in a good weather game, if Washington took us seriously, we don't beat Washington. I'll say that.
I think that's fair. I mean, but so I look at that and I'm like, if we had any level of competency on offense, we probably still win that game. Because I do think that we made Damon Williams ultra uncomfortable in that game. And I think that is legitimate. He maybe plays a little bit better if they take us seriously, but it was pretty clear that they really struggled to keep us out of the backfield.
Now, to be really quickly fair, a lot of that was DP and Reiger. That was when Jared was playing like his best.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not debating that at all. I do think that to some extent, and to agree with you, we talked about Reiger and some of the stuff that he's doing, and he's showing out at the Shrine Bowl. That's not a shock to anybody. He's going to be an absolute stud. I said it, it would not shock me to see him come out of this and end up putting himself into like the third round.
Yeah. Dennis Reynolds.
And I think that there are parts of the game that you can probably recreate with certain guys, but I don't think you're going to be as well-rounded. Like, I think Clayton can come in and give some of the pass rush that Reiger gave you last year. I don't think he's going to be nearly as good against the run. Like, the level of physicality and strength that Reiger had he had grown man strength off the edge. I think Clayton gives you more burst, So there's some flexibility there in terms of like explosiveness, but I question whether he's going to be able to outmuscle a tackle if the tackle gets his hands on him. And that's something that we're going to have to worry about this year.
Let's be honest too. Reiger just had, not to spend this whole show on Mr. Reiger, he had a motor that was always wound.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling you, people are always dismissive of that. Playing hard's a talent and a skill, and not everybody does it.
Both the Watt brothers, for as much physical talent as they had nonstop motors, and they made their careers in the NFL by being guys who played their butts off all the time. And that was one of the things that they said, because they talked about Watt being a guy like TJ being one of those guys, or I'm sorry, JJ being one of those guys. When he was at Houston, the guys would get pissed practicing against him because he played so hard. And they're like, why don't you take it down? He's like, I'll take it down when I retire because I'm only going to be able to play this for so long that I'm going to do as much as I can while I'm actually able to play so that I don't feel like I left anything when I'm done. And that was something that both of those guys had. And that's something you can control on the field. And if that was one of the things, that's why when I wanted Trick from Miami of Ohio, because I felt like he had some of that attitude. And I'm like, this is something you want in that room. And I'm hoping it rubbed off on some of the young guys. Like, I know we only hear so much, but I would love to find out that Clayton has taken up that mantle and is now kind of the whirling dervish off the edge in spring. And we find out that, yeah, he's got all these physical tools, but he's a guy that plays nonstop. Because if that's the case, he's going to be a monster by the time he gets to junior year.
I agree. No, Clayton has every physical tool set you want for an edge rusher. Let's finish up here, Justin. I want to ask you upper and lower bands. So upper win band, lower win band. Where do you think the high water mark of this team is wins next year, and where is the potential low water mark? To me, I'll start off on this one. I think 8 wins is the high water mark. I think that is the high water mark. I think there's some teams you're not going to beat next year. I just don't think this team is quite there. And 8 wins to me is a really good year. That's a really good year, a ton of progress. I think the low water mark, and I'm going to say not factoring in injuries, right? If your quarterback gets hurt, as we've seen, adjust everything. I think the low water mark is like 5 with the schedule. So I think 5 to 7 to 8 and 4 is kind of like where we're going to be.
Yeah, I think I'm slightly better. I think, and I brought this up on Rajiv and our show. I'm like, what is the worst case scenario for Joseph? And I thought about this and I was like, he throws for like 2,100 yards. He has like 13 touchdown passes and like 10 picks.
He's like Taylor Martinez
at
Nebraska.
And you're like, this is not really elevating us. He's not much of a passing threat. I don't think that that's going to be like, this is the worst case scenario. I think that I would probably put us at something like 6-6. And I think there's a chance that 9-3 is in play, but you need so much to go right. Like, you need a couple of those receivers that you brought in to legitimately be really good. And you need Joseph to be good enough to be consistently take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And I think that you need the offensive line to come together, and you need the running game to be substantially improved from where we were at. So like, there's a lot of factors that need to come into play for that to be an issue. And that's a lot of that is driven by the fact that I also, like I said, I don't see the schedule being particularly daunting this year. I think there's a lot of in-play games, but there's also a lot of games that we can end up blowing where we're just not as good as we should be.
Yeah, I hear you. Any given Saturday, lots of things can happen. If you went 9-3, that'd be amazing. There were years when we were more put together, when we were more consistent playing in the Big Ten West, and we didn't get to 9 wins, right? Yeah. And maybe Colton Joseph, and we've had a lot of comments, and it's a really good one. Colton Joseph, he's good, changes everything. The quarterback,
sure,
everything. So if he's at the upper level of his potential,
if he ends up having the same level of passing stats that he had at Old Dominion and runs for 600 yards, what do you think our record is?
8 wins. I think we get 8. I still don't think we get 9. I
think that makes him a better quarterback than 10 of the teams that we play, if that's what he is.
Maybe. I mean, I
like some of these games. It's so hard for me to look at Penn State, by the way, and know what we're getting there, because they've had such a mass exodus of players from that roster, and they brought in so much Iowa State that it's like, are we going to see like a version of Iowa State this year? If that's the case, that's not particularly a game that I look at and say like, this is unwinnable. If he puts it together, like I do think there's a chance that Campbell struggles year one.
Fickle did. So we didn't necessarily think Fickle would, and he did. And now I will say, if you're at these other programs,
bringing in a quarterback, which helps.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at these other programs though, and you're looking at Wisconsin, you're going to say, "Oh, that's a win," just because of what we've been the last couple of years. So I think it's easy to look at some of these other programs and have questions, but we're on their schedule. We're much more of a mark, right? Mm-hmm. Just this team has so much to prove, man. I just have a hard time saying they're going to go from not being able to get to a bowl or win rivalry games to getting 9 wins. That just feels like such.
Well, that's why I said that's like if everything goes right, that's where your ceiling probably is. Like I still think this team will get tripped up in games because it's not like we're an established team. Like next year, if everything goes well this year, you maybe have a chance that next year ends up being an improved year. You have so many new pieces. Like it's really hard for me to look at this and say, offensively, we're going to be running on, like a well-oiled machine this season because a lot of these guys are going to be figuring things out. And this is what I don't like about this team is you have a lot of players that you're counting on for production that are their first season in your system. So that means you're going to have a watered down offensive system no matter what, because you have a bunch of new guys that you're looking at where it's like, I don't have, I don't look at these guys and say he's going to be locked in and able to be super productive. It's the same thing with Joseph. Like I look at him, if he's really good this year, he's going to grow and he's going to be better. And there's going to be some of the things next year that you're going to see from him that are going to make him much more difficult to deal with than they will this year, where we're going to have to kind of water it down and be like, we need to figure out the things we're going to be good at. And your athleticism is certainly going to help, but we're not going to be the most mentally challenging team to deal with because the scheme's not going to push a lot of defenses.
Really quick, I threw the schedule up there. Again, we got to figure out where these games line up. That release is coming up. But this is who we're playing. I'll tell you right now, I don't think we're beating Notre Dame. I know it's in Lambeau.
I would agree with that.
I don't think we're tripping up Notre Dame. I know you and I have talked about this. Until they are competitive against Iowa, I think Iowa's a loss to me.
I would accept that.
That's 2 losses. Then you still have Penn State and USC. Penn State going to Pennsylvania. You're right. Who knows? But that's still going to be a team with talent, and you have to go on the road. USC come to Wisconsin, come to Madison, but that's a team with talent. Maybe you split those. That gives you 3 losses right there, though. And then you still have to – you're probably going to trip up one more time somewhere.
Yeah, and that very well could be. I mean, there's a lot of games in there that you should expect to win. Like the other 2 non-conference games, those should be blowouts. And that to me will tell us a lot about this team. If we can get those 2 games where we go out and we win 49-7 against those 2 games, that's the type of thing. I want to see us beat down Maryland this year. Like I think that's really important that you go out and you absolutely destroy them in that game.
Please.
Purdue has got to be a game where you make it, like you show out and make a point. UCLA is another one, and UCLA is bringing in a established coach that did really well at JMU, so they can be much improved. Michigan State, I'm not super scared of them. Minnesota, coach, until they prove they can run the football, I think that we feel better about the defense, especially the secondary, going against that team. We were competitive in that game with a broken offense. So a lot of this is I look at some of these games and I'm like, if we're not pure crap on offense, this team should be far better. There's not a lot of teams that scare me offensively. I think the 3 teams that I'm most afraid of offensively are clearly Notre Dame, probably Penn State, and USC. I'm not afraid of Iowa. I think the defense has to be better, but I am afraid that Iowa could end up beating us 17-10 because we can't do anything offensively.
What's the most important game on the schedule next year? Again, without really knowing where they lay out.
I think it's Iowa. Like that's a game you got to prove that you can. Number one, you're playing at Kinnick, and I think that it's really important that you go and have a good showing there. And you need to keep that game competitive and prove that you can play the physical game with them. Now, us having our starting quarterback just for the entire season changes everything for this team. I do feel better, even if that weren't to play out. I like Deuce Williams as a backup better than anything we had last year. I remember not being super sold on O'Neal last year just because the physical tools, like, and just even watching the highlights, I'm like, I'm not sure how well this carries over. I like the tools that Deuce Adams has.
I think he probably has a better tool set. I thought Don was fine as a backup, to be honest. Like, let's be honest, in a more functional offense, Daniel Neal would have looked better too. Like,
for sure.
You can't
The
carry.
offensive line was the biggest problem last year.
I think he was fine. Let me ask you this. Let's finish here. By the way, my most important game is Minnesota. Like, I totally get all the reasons for Iowa. I think a lot of people will go Iowa. Badger Bournemouth said Iowa. But I just got to beat Minnesota, man. I got to beat PJ Fleck. I'm so sick of them beating us. Well, last question here, Justin. Dennis Reynolds need to not get blown up by Notre Dame. What's more likely, a close Badger win against Notre Dame or a Notre Dame blowout? And I'll define a blowout by like Notre Dame wins by like 17 plus.
That's a good question.
I
would probably say blowout.
I do too.
But it's so hard to tell because I have no idea what we're looking at. And Wisconsin hasn't been like, it's not like, I don't know. I mean, Notre Dame has had games like that where they've blown teams off the field. But they've also, like, you and I talked about their schedule. Notre Dame is like the one team, like if we're talking potential playoff teams, they cannot afford to lose 2 games.
Agreed.
Because if they lose 2 games, their season's over. They're probably going to lose to Miami. And other than that, like, the rest of their schedule is pure trash.
Bo's been consistent on this too. Every game they got stomped because the garbage passing game. Colton Joseph in a legitimate passing game changes everything for this team. And yeah, it's not impossible to beat Notre Dame at Lambeau. Several years ago, people didn't think Wisconsin would beat LSU.
We've talked about it, and I brought it up with Rugiet plenty of times. We're going to see a lot of zone coverage with him because teams aren't going to want to turn their back on him. Yeah. Outside of that, too, on third down, there's going to be some things he can do with his legs that are going to be a problem. Like, as much as even if a team has good edge rushers, if they're not 4-6 guys, there's going to be times if they get hung up for a second, he's just going to race them to the edge, and he'll win that foot race.
Can I tell you the possible negative thing we're going to see, though? We might see a lot of man coverage because our receivers can't get open, and then they'll just quarterback spy with a safety.
The spy is the one thing that you're going to see is either it's going to be, I don't know how often you're going to go with the middle linebacker unless you have a freaking A shirt.
Yeah, our receivers have to win battles. They have to get open.
For sure.
Struggle for this team.
You do have some speed, at least in this. The one thing we could say, we don't know about production with the wide receiver group. You got to like guys like Kearney and Coleman being able to just stretch the field. If they can do nothing else but run fast in a straight line, they're capable of that.
Can I tell you, I should have known better for this show. I had planned this out for like a 20-minute show. We're at 37 right now.
We haven't talked in a while.
I know. So we're going to wrap it there on Wisconsin as always, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Big pickup in the 27 class. Adding to that in-state group, Dustin Roach, athletic, long safety. A bunch more content coming up as always. Game tomorrow, reaction show after that. Our Locked On Badgers meetup the following weekend for the Ohio State game. Bro, they better beat Ohio State, dude, in that meetup. Dude, they better beat Ohio State. But we're all going to be there on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk to you guys later.